First of all, let me just acknowledge Coach Arya and Magda and Ram for putting this together. What a great initiative for everybody who is attending and for those that have the opportunity to share their work in the world. So as Magda said, my name is Trace Hobson. I live in Canada, British Columbia. I'm coming from the early morning of British Columbia on the west coast of Canada. And I'm so grateful to be able to be here and to also share this space with Karolina Fierman, who is my colleague who lives and works in Holland. And we're going to be talking about systemic coaching today, and we're going to be talking about the wholeness and the healing that can happen in individual lives, in teams, and in organizations as a result of systemic coaching, management, and leadership. And so it's really important, the results that we can achieve with systemic coaching and management. But what's even more important is the way that this work serves the human spirit, and what can happen when one person, a group of people, work together in a systemic way. It's very powerful. And so I'm here with my dear friend Karolina Fierman, who is my friend and colleague who lives in Holland, as I mentioned. Karolina is working as an executive in the healthcare field in Holland. And Karolina, why don't you just share where you are sitting and the kind of work that you do, and then we'll transition from there.
Yeah, thank you, Trace. And I'm very happy and honored to be here today with all the people that we don't see in this meeting, but I can see all the messages coming by. So welcome. My name is Karolina Fierman, and I live in the Netherlands, in the south of the country. And I work in the Netherlands as an executive, a manager in a healthcare organization. And this healthcare organization works nationally. And we treat and help people who are deaf and deafblind with communication and with leading a normal life and being able to communicate and have contact with the people around them.
Thank you, Karolina. So to give you an overview, a very quick overview of the journey that we're going to explore today, I'm going to share my screen with you and just share an overview of what you're going to experience in this webinar today. And so the first thing is we're going to be experiencing this phenomenon that we have going on in the world of everything moving faster and faster as we go through the world as coaches, managers, and leaders, organizations that are going through transformation and transition. Everything is not slowing down. It seems to be going faster than ever. And so we look at this phenomenon, and we're going to explore the faster phenomenon. And the way that we break this down in our work is that faster stands for the fear, the anxiety, the stress, the tension, and the resistances, and the energy that's underneath those resistances as well. And so we're going to explore that today, and we're going to discuss that in the form of a conversation that Karolina and I will be having. And what we're really doing together is talking about how we're listening, interpreting, translating the energy underneath resistance inside of individuals, teams, and organizations so that we can really wake up to the signs, the signals, and the alerts that are going on all the time. So today's journey, that we're going to go on is, number one, we're going to be talking about the system transformation process, and the conversation that Karolina and I will have will be based on the work that she and I have done in Holland and a case story that we'll discuss and have a conversation about. Number two, we're going to be talking about that case story in depth from a management perspective, a coaching perspective, and also a leadership perspective, so that you can get different angles on that particular case story. Then we're going to do an exercise together. We're going to lead you through an exercise that's experiential and is based on the work that we do. So have a pen and paper ready for that, and we'll go into that. So just have that handy. And then lastly, we're going to take any questions that you might have as well. So we're just going to break off there. And to begin with, Karolina, what might be very helpful is if you could share sort of where this work starts for you, where the systemic transformation process started for you, and what you were experiencing at that time in your work, and then sort of what happened to lead you into a new path from where you were.
Yeah, it started when I was at a point of leaving the organization where I work, still now. And I was at the point of leaving the organization where I had been working at that time for 7 years as a manager, because it was such a hard time in Holland, and as in a lot of other countries too, I believe. The whole way of financing healthcare had changed, and there was a very, very big financial issue in the organization, and that had an immense impact on me as a manager as well as on the people in my unit. And yeah, I didn't see how to find a way in all of that. So I was at the point of leaving the organization, and it was at that point that someone pointed me at the work of Alan Seal, the Transformational Presence approach, and I thought, why not? Let's give it a try. And I went to a Transformational Presence training, and that was a training that put me on the way to really start working with me in everything that was going on. And I immediately knew that there was something powerful there for me in the situation, that when I would stay and would learn how to work with everything that was going on there, that would be immensely powerful for me and for the people that I work with and the organization. So I believe it was only a month after the Transformational Presence training that I met you, and that we started working together in a training process, a year-long training process. And that in that year, I started learning to really work with me as the hub of everything that was going on in the system, in my unit, and that we started creating this new approach that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, thank you for that, Karolina. So I love that you've mentioned Alan Seal and the Center for Transformational Presence and Alan's work, because for me as an executive, when I was starting to work with energy, specifically in the role that I was in Canada as a director of operations, at that time, I really had brought in a lot of the work from Virginia Satir and from Peter Senge and Otto Scharmer, and started to incorporate my own approach with working with energy, and specifically working with the huge amount of stress and tension that I noticed around me in the organization that I was in. And so as I started to develop the system transformation process, or it was developing me, that became clearer and clearer over time. When I left the corporate world 3 years ago and I started to form my own business, and then I met Alan and started to work with him as well, Alan's work brought so much clarity and language and some very simple, powerful tools. And we're going to use one of those tools that's been integrated and incorporated with the exercise that we're doing today. But I love that you've brought him into this, because I know for me, incorporating Alan's work into my work has created just a great foundation for working systemically with energy that's going on inside of me and outside of me. And then of course, we, over the last 2 years, did a project at your place of work, and we've discovered this a huge expansion there as well by working with the potential and with the energy. Now, at first, just so that everybody can relate to this, we were working with energy that we didn't really want to work with. It was a lot of fear and anxiety and stress, a lot of tension. And at first, I think a lot of people that are working in transformation projects or in reorgs or reorganizations can relate to the fact that everybody is maxed out for their capacity and feeling overwhelmed in organizations that are in huge flux. We're moving from this old version of leadership that's command and control to something that's new, that's whole, that's connected, collaborative, and even compassionate. And so when we first started working together, Karolina, can you describe the climate a little bit more specifically in terms of what you were going through, what your team was going through, and what the organization was going through?
Yeah, well, I shared a little bit already what I was going through. There was a lot of stress, and yeah, I didn't know how to be able to cope with everything that was going on. And that was also true for a lot of my employees, a lot of the staff in my unit. We were in the middle of a transition from working the way that we were used to work for years into a care programming structure with less money and a lot of pressure on payable hours, billable hours. And that was all completely new for this whole organization. So that brought a lot of stress. And it was necessary because the organization really needed another way of working because we needed the money. So a lot of stress and tension, anxiety. And that was also tangible in numbers. So for example, my absenteeism rate was at 2 years ago, 8.7%, which is really high. And I wasn't able to meet the productivity rate that we all should deliver in our units. That wasn't possible, and it was also not possible to create a healthy financial result. So on so many levels, it was really difficult.
What was it like to come to work for the people that were working on your team and working with clients? What would it have been like on their teams, and what would they have been experiencing at that time?
Yeah, people were all complaining about being tired, feeling overwhelmed, not able to feel their own power inside. So they felt that they were really, that something was thrown over the fence, is what we say in Holland, thrown over the fence, and then, do something with it, but make sure that you do something with it. And how? Nobody tells you, so people feel powerless.
Yeah, that's what we call that in Canada is, our desks are being filled up by the corporate world, all the stuff that's coming on, and then we just want to clear the desk off, just push everything off the desk and get it done, which often...
Yeah, and also get back to what they were, why they started working in the organization.
Yeah, that's so important, because say a little bit about why it is that the people that work where you work, why do they do what they do?
Because they have such big hearts for their clients. It's such a specific group of people who are deaf or deaf-blind, who have not the easy access as we have to information and communication and a social life. And these employees of mine, they have such big hearts. They've so much knowledge also of ways to help these people. Yeah, it's really a passion and even a vocation for a lot of them.
Yeah, and I love, from being exposed to your organization and working with the people that work there, the amazing commitment that they have to their clients, and also the families of their clients, because many of the people that your staff work with are also children. So they have their parents and their siblings and others that are also being touched by those clients. And what you just said a few seconds ago is really important, that the people that are involved in organizations like this got into the work not because they wanted to be really good at crunching the numbers and counting the beans. They got into it because they loved the people that, and wanted to serve them. And so what a huge amount of dissonance that must have created for your team. And so this is a common thing all over the world. No matter where we work, we're finding this, and not just in healthcare, but in every industry that we work in. There's this huge amount of dissonance that people are feeling because we're so out of alignment with something that's natural and whole and really comes from the inside out rather than the outside in. And one other thing about that that's very important too regarding our work is the fact that oftentimes, I know I felt like this in the corporate world, maybe you felt like this, Karolina, the organization is going through such big changes and it feels so large. What can I do as one person? I don't know that I can do anything. Like, did you find that in your organization too?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I meant with people feeling powerless.
Right.
We also felt powerless in
Right.
the situation a few years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the first reaction to that, I know for most people, and me included, is that I want to get the heck out of there. I don't want to be in the organization anymore. And this is a big problem all over the world too, for organizations losing their best people because of this type of phenomenon. So then something happened and we started to work together. And so from just start with you and your experience with working with this system transformation process and working with the energy for you as a manager, and what began to start to shift for you. And just take us through, start at the beginning with the faster energy, the fear, the anxiety, the stress, the tension, maybe some of the resistance you had in the form of complaints and criticisms, and then what started to happen as you worked with that energy.
Yeah, I already shared that there was anxiety inside of me, tension, and it all came together also with changes in my own life. So as a result of all of that, I didn't sleep. I slept for, I think, a year, an hour and a half, 2 hours per night. So I was really, really tired. And what happened when we started working together was that I was helped to stop and stand still and listen to the energy underneath the fear that I felt, the anxiety, the wish to walk away. What was underneath? And as I started listening to that energy, I started also noticing that there was something inside of me that wanted to transform, because the way that I was responding to all of that wasn't helpful. It made me not sleep, for example. So something wanted to change there. And that was a process that happened inside of me. It was not something that was outside of me in the workplace, but it was really a personal thing. So when I started working with this personal issue, these personal issues, and started listening to what wanted to change and transform inside of me, I started to find my own power again. And that was, for example, tangible in that I wasn't exhausted anymore at the end of the day, because I started to learn how to work with my own energy. Nothing changed on the outside in the beginning, but it all changed inside of me. And I started to find my positivity again, and my vitality. I refound it, and I started also finding ways of looking from a different angle to what was going on in the workplace.
Yeah, that's amazing. So there's a really important piece here that you're describing, because when we feel like we're overwhelmed with so many different big changes, we often are looking outside of ourselves and seeing these big systemic issues, these challenges. And what you're describing is that you started to take that focus and move it from outside and take it and put it inside of yourself. And that began to do something that we call listening to the conversation that has no words. There's a conversation underneath the lives of every person that's on this webinar right now and underneath your work. And it's an energetic conversation that's asking for your attention and drawing you into a dialogue and inviting you into a dialogue. Now, at first, that comes through as some pretty uncomfortable feelings and uncomfortable situations. But as we listen to it, rather than trying to solve it, there's something that begins to happen, like Karolina is describing, inside of us that transitions and moves and shifts for me as an individual. But then that becomes the foundation of the way that we then do the work outside of us. As we do the work inside of us that we're talking about, there's a systemic outflow that begins to happen so that you show up differently at work and begin to have different results as well. So describe what happened for you as you started to do that work from inside. Then what started to happen for you at work as well, Karolina?
Yeah, when I started to find my own power again, I noticed that there were possibilities. There were loads of possibilities in my unit to go forward in the situation. And so the first thing that we did when I was on my feet again was to start working with one of my teams as a pilot. And it was a team of 6 women. And these women had a particular hard time with everything that was going on. And I had no other option than to do either a pilot and help them move into transition into the new way of working that we were getting used to in the organization, or I had to split them up. So that was the first thing that I started doing outside of me in the unit with this team of women, and we did it together, which was challenging for those ladies because it was online and in English, and the fact alone that it was in English and online made that something opened inside of their minds for a new approach. And we started working with those 6 ladies in only a few meetings, only 6 meetings, to help them start to listen to their conversation that was going on inside of them and underneath all of it, and give them tools and language to start to work with it together in that team. Yeah, and the rest is history, because this pilot was really successful. This team is still together, and they are the example until today for a lot of the other teams in the unit.
What's really interesting about this is because as we track it from the individual, which is Karolina, and then she begins to work with this team, there's a correlation with the work that she's doing inside of her, and then the same work that the team's doing as well. Because at that time, I remember there being a lot of anxiety and fear and stress, like we mentioned, but also there was a lot of complaints going on as well, which is very typical. When things don't go the way that we would like them to, rather than listening to that as a message or an opportunity, we often start to criticize that or complain about that. And as Karolina did the work that she was doing inside of her, she became a space holder for the same work to happen in that small team, the 6 women that were there. And I remember those first couple of meetings, they were a little tense. I mean, at first, we weren't sure how that was going to go, because they had a lot of complaints, and they also had a lot of anxiety about, will I be able to work here and care for my clients the same way that I used to? I don't think so. I don't know if I'll be able to do that. And so in a very short amount of time, they began to notice that they actually had all the power in the situation that they wanted to claim and take responsibility for. And as they did that, they started to have some ingredients happen for them. What were the ingredients that they began to have as individuals and then as a team for the organization?
Yeah, it started with tools to really have another look at a same situation.
Right.
Not get caught in the drama of a situation, for example. So
Yeah.
we help them to take an observer standpoint maybe and have a look at what was going on and what it was asking from them. By doing that, they started to reconnect with their own power because they made decisions about how they wanted to be in the situation and how they wanted to respond to what was going on.
Yeah. There's a huge, somebody just chatted something that is very connected to our work, and they put in the question, dissonance to resonance. And this is very important because this human energy system that we have called our bodies and our experiences of reality and our systemic experience, we have a gauge that's built into us. And it does show up just like that. It's dissonance, and we know that conversation that has no words is trying to talk to us. And then as we align with who we are and what's most important from the inside out of who we are and why we're here as human beings, then we begin to resonate. And it doesn't matter what the situation or the circumstances are. We begin to actually work with it in a completely different way. And as Karoline's describing, going from an individual awareness to a team awareness and an experience. And then something began to shift in the whole system. Karoline, describe what happened after you worked with this team and what started to actually ripple out from there.
Yeah, well, I was excited with what I saw happening in that team. So it reinforced my own process. And that's key, because if I wouldn't have been able to bring positivity and energy into the space with this team, it wouldn't have worked. So it reinforced me. And from that, I started with another pilot. The word pilot really helped me and my unit, because there's no pressure on a pilot. It's more fun. And that was also a part of the process, because everything was so serious and hard in the organization. And we started doing something new and also fun. But the next phase was that I invited 5 different teams who were searching for a way to work together for years, and they didn't succeed. So I invited them into the same space, and we started working with them in the same way, listening to the energy, connecting with themselves, with each other, and from there moving forward. So in no time, these 5 teams started working together.
Now, you're talking about the meeting that we designed together for that one day for the 5 teams that were all sort of meet. So just to give a bit of context, the organization had been trying to work with these 5 teams to break down the silos and improve communication so that they could share resources, staffing resources, information about clients, so that they could work together more effectively. How long had the organization been trying to get that to happen?
10 years.
And so we designed a meeting that you actually delivered in the organization. And how long was the meeting that you delivered?
2 hours, no, 1 hour and a half, and another 1 hour and a half meeting. So after 3 hours, something had really shifted. And
so and I know at first, if you're listening to this, that sounds crazy, because you're going, well, how can you change something in 3 hours in 2 meetings that hadn't changed for 10 years? Well, there's some very specific ways that happens. First of all, we were working with the systemic energy that was going on underneath everything. And Karolina actually created a space of safety so that those people could begin to explore in a new way. And when you work with energy, everything can happen so much more quickly. And the results are also vibrant for the system as well. So Karolina, what's the fallout of those two meetings for those teams now, months and months later? What are they doing now with what you showed them?
They're still working. The first team of 6 late, they're still working as a team, and 5 teams, they are connected and they share what they need to share. And we're now in a place where we can start to look at the next step.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about those teams, and they become self-directed. They're actually taking the initiative on their own to meet and to talk about clients and talk about resources, and the organization isn't having to drive that at all. So that's a huge step forward as well. Now, as you've built a great sort of picture for us of this work that you were doing with that whole organization, and then it goes from those 6 women and 5 teams to another step as well. Yeah. Describe what the next step after all of this was.
That was my unit. So, and I started describing my unit as a unit of 180 people. Yeah. And in fact, 50 are all over the country. So it's in fact 130 people. And I started inviting all 130 people into a meeting, and all of the people in one day. So, because that's what I saw as the next step to help build a foundation in my unit for everyone in the unit to have the same language, the same tools that we do in a meeting, and a follow-up in homework to do in their teams. And what we do in those meetings, what we do in those meetings for the whole unit, is that we create space to talk and dive into how we work together. Right. What is addressed during the whole year. So it's a meeting of 2 hours, and we work with how we work, the energy underneath in everyone and in the system. And yeah, so people are invited, and they have to come, as I said, in either a morning or an evening, afternoon meeting. But at the end of the day, not all 130, but about 100 people have been in this meeting. And the next day they talk about it at the coffee machine, and it's implemented directly after such a meeting. So that was...
Yeah. So it's interesting what you're saying about them having to come, and traditionally my thinking at one time used to be, you can't make people come to a meeting and change. And what I realized in this process and learned as a leader, a manager, and a coach myself is that there's an intrinsic agreement that the people of that organization have made by being part of that organization. And so there's requirements and there's different things that we ask the people that we work with to do. And so we did have their permission by that intrinsic agreement to come into that meeting. Now, what's critical about that is what we actually did once they got there. And one of the huge pieces of this work, and I think Karolina, you might want to just chime in here too, is the way that we create safety for people to be able to experience something new and to also perform at high levels. My experience has taught me that safety and performance are corollary. They have to be together. In order for us to be in our highest performance, we need to be safe. And so say a little bit about the safety level of your unit now compared to what it was and what you're noticing is happening.
Yeah, the safety level now is really high.
And how do you know that? How do you know that it is?
Well, In fact, it's in Dutch, so it's I would have to translate it. But in fact, yesterday I received, on Sunday, I received an email from one of my employees. And she wrote that she was so happy with everything that we've been doing in the last 2 years, because it not only helped her to be able to work with problems and difficulties in another way, but it also affected the way that she's showing up in her family and with her friends, and that she's so thankful for all of that, and that it's provided by all of us, but also by me. Sorry, I'm a bit with a coming flu.
Yeah, it's okay.
And what I do is that it starts with me. So I have the capacity to be with what it is that's going on in my unit and in people. Mm-hmm. That's what's there. And there needs to be space for that. And that's what she acknowledged. That's what and everyone feels that what it is okay to be with that and show up with that. Mm. And yeah, in the meetings we have 4 meetings in a year. That's the structure that has come out of everything. 4 meetings every 3 months. And yeah, that's where this safe space is reinforced every time that we meet. Yeah, and so how do you create safety? By, first of all, being safe myself with everything that's showing up, and then giving permission and showing them also that there is permission to be with whatever it is that's there.
Yeah, this is what my experience has been as well, is that safety always starts from inside of me, and my capacity to listen to the conversation that has no words for me as a manager, a leader, and a coach. And when that happens, there's incredible things that can happen for people. And when I first started working with this, probably about 10 years ago now, in an organization that was high stress and very, very difficult, what I noticed is the same thing that you did, is that as we started to work with the energy and work with what was going on underneath everything, there was a natural safety that started to take place. And then the people their work was going better. But what really caught my attention was the way that they were coming back from home and saying, my spouse and my family are saying, whatever you're doing at work, keep doing it, because you're different now. And so please keep doing it. And so when I realized that the human spirit was being nourished in a way that was affecting everywhere systemically, not just at work, but also at home, and that person as an individual, for me, it's just so beautiful to watch the way that people are empowered and able to live the lives and do their work in a way that is very, very fulfilling for them.
Yeah.
So now, as you are looking at all of this, and we've kind of painted a picture for everybody that's listening, there's also the reality that the way that we work is systemic, and then it has a corollary as a result as well. And so at the beginning of your story, you shared with us about the financial pressure that was going on in the organization and the absenteeism and some of the things that were happening there. What have you noticed now has shifted as a result of this work in some of those practical areas as well?
Yeah, so what I've noticed is by focusing on the how side of the work, how are we working together, and working on safety and everything that we've been talking about, as an outcome, as a result of all of that, the absenteeism rates now are between 2 and 3%. At the moment, it's 2.3%. So that's compared to where we started, 8.6, 8.7 is amazing. And that's a result that we created in a year over a year. And the productivity has gone up as a result. We haven't focused on productivity going up, but as a result of all of this, productivity has gone up with 15 to 20%. So that's amazing too, for people too, to realize that all of a sudden they are meeting the standards that they need to meet, and it's just there. So that's also wonderful to notice. And the financial result is is amazing, because compared to where we started to where we are now, there's a plus 800,000 euros.
Wow, wow, that's great. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's in an organization that's a foundation-based organization, so a nonprofit, and a nonprofit that had been suffering financially for a long time. So thank you for that, Karolina. Now we want to just transition into, what exactly are we doing in the process? Now, obviously, we can't cover all of this process here. And so I'm going to give it a bit of context for those that are listening. And then we're going to get into an exercise that will give you an experience of this work as well. And so, first of all, the way that we work with this, it's really contextualized by being open to 4 channels of awareness. The first channel of awareness is me and what I notice going on inside of me. And this is important because most of the time when we think of systemic work, we look outside of ourselves and we see the big system problems or toxicity that's happening in an organization or in a community, and we go, man, that needs to be fixed. But we actually are really thwarting our progress when we do that. And the first channel of awareness invites us to actually do what Karolina's described, which is to begin to look inside and listen on a deep level to what's going on the inside, and also listen to the conversation that has no words that's going on around us as well. Now, there's specific techniques and ways to do that, but just for now, just know that as you open up to the first channel of awareness, we're talking about an awareness that moves from many times being based, our listening being based in the intellect, to the rest of this energy system, to connecting and listening with our hearts and listening with our guts and listening with all of us, so that we can hear more information in that first channel of awareness. Now, first of all, that serves us. That serves us to begin to work with that faster energy that I showed you on the first slide, that fear, anxiety, stress, tension, and to drop down underneath it and notice that we can work with that energy in ways that really serve us. And as we do that, that sets the stage for us then to look at the second channel of awareness in a different way. And the second channel of awareness is all of those people and processes and projects and teams that are around us. The second channel is everybody else out there. The way that we look at the organization, that's the second channel of awareness. And there's techniques to then bridge from that expansion of awareness in the first channel to the second channel. And then we move into the very, very powerful place of the space in between the two, which is channel 3. There's me, and then there's everyone and everything else out there. And then there's the space in between this channel 3, that space where all of the creation happens. We are constantly, always and already creating our reality in the spaces in between us and everyone and everything else. And then there's channel 4. And channel 4, I really lean on the natural systems of the world to describe channel 4. Channel 4 is the higher frequency of information that you discover when you walk out into the middle of a forest and slow down and listen to the life of that forest, to the trees and to the animals and to the insects and to everything that's there. And you slow down and breathe and listen deeply to that frequency of information. That forest and those natural systems teach us everything we need to know about working systemically throughout those other 3 channels. As we listen to the forest and we align with what's true inside of us, we begin to listen to a holographic conversation. It's a holographic and quantum conversation that invites us into alignment and connection and collaboration with something that's beyond us and bigger than us, so that we can work in a way that serves, yes, serves us, but also serves very powerfully the people around us as well. And so we're going to move into an exercise, and I'm going to share my screen with you for this exercise. So have a piece of paper and a pen ready, and we'll go there now. And then we're going to have some time where we discuss a little bit more on questions, and we can also share the space as well with others that want to ask us some questions. So I'm hoping that you can see this here. Excuse me. So the first step is to have the piece of paper and the pen together and ready to work. And what we're going to do is draw a circle on one side of the paper, and that represents you, and you can put me in that circle. And then draw the bridge over to the other circle and put a challenge that's got your attention right now. It's a challenge for you personally or professionally. It doesn't really matter. You won't have to share this with anybody, so you can put any challenge in there that you would like to. And I'll just give you a couple seconds to write that down, and even boil it down to one word, just to represent your challenge for you. And once you have that drawn, put the paper in front of you on the desk or on your table, and put your pen down on the desk. And then allow yourself to relax in your chair and take a deep breath. And as you breathe into your body and begin to relax, intentionally allow the chair to hold you and feel your body being held by the chair. And take another deep breath into your body and notice all of the different thoughts and feelings, and those are all fine. There's nothing to change about any of that. Even if this is a little awkward or different, just trust that some part of you knows exactly how to listen like this, and take another deep breath. And as you're ready, take your hand and put your hand into the middle space between you and the challenge on your piece of paper. And as you put your hand into that space, take a deep breath into the space in between you and that challenge. And as you notice that space, what do you notice the thoughts and feelings and beliefs and stories are there? And just observe and breathe and notice whatever's there for you. There's nothing to change or fix about this. Just notice and breathe. And as you notice all of those different thoughts and feelings and beliefs and stories, are they actually true? Are they true right now? There's no need to get into a debate about it. Just notice, are these true? And there's nothing to do with that information other than to notice it. And take another deep breath. And as you notice all of that, what do you notice the system of relationship that you're creating is like between you and that challenge? And take a deep breath into your body to listen with your whole body. And as you notice that, what do you notice will happen if you continue to operate this way? Now, as you breathe into that space and notice all this information, there's nothing to do with any of it at this point. Just trust that inside of you, you have all of the capacity and wisdom to navigate all of this. And we're now going to take 4 intentional breaths with this information. So as you have your hand connected to that space in between, take a deep breath of acknowledgement of everything that you're noticing right now, whatever it is. Maybe this is really comfortable for you and you feel very comfortable. Maybe it's really uncomfortable. Acknowledge all of it by taking 1 deep breath. And as you acknowledge all of it, in the next breath, breathe acceptance of everything that is happening for you right now in that space in between. Take another deep breath of acceptance. And as you breathe acceptance, just notice what's going on for you and accept whatever is here for you, whatever that is, with your breath. And now take another breath of appreciation for the ways that this way of being and this relationship system that you're creating has served you and helped you. And take a deep breath of appreciation. And also, as you breathe appreciation for the ways it served you, notice whether or not it's still serving you. And if it is, great. And if it isn't, that's okay too. Just notice. And now that you've appreciated it, take a 4th breath. And this breath, this is allowing this to become what it wants to become next. Take a deep breath of allowing whatever wants to happen systemically to happen next for you. And it's okay if you don't know what that is. Just trust that inside of you, you already know how to do this and to be with the uncertainty. Now, as you breathe with all of this, we're going to ask 3 intentional questions. So take a deep breath into everything you're discovering with this. And the first question is, what do you notice that wants to shift systemically for you in the space between you and your challenge? What do you notice wants to begin to shift and transform? And just take a deep breath to notice what that is. And as you notice what wants to transform and shift for you, take another breath and ask the space in between, who are you asking me to be right now? And I know that might be a strange question to ask, but just trust that inside of you, you already know how to do this and what the answer is going to be. It's going to come very easily just by breathing and listening. Who are you asking me to be right now? Space between. And the final question, as you notice who it's asking you to be, is what are you asking me to do in 1 step? What is the next step that you're asking me to take with this challenge? And take a deep breath to listen to what the energy action step is. And as you begin to get the information, take a few moments now and write any notes that are important for you to write. Any notes that are important for you to be aware of. And when you're ready, share in just one word in the chat or a couple of words what you're noticing and learning about systemic coaching and leadership for you, just with this one challenge for you. And then we can begin to field any questions and unpack this a little bit more. And Karolina, you can come back on now.
Here I am again.
So Karolina, as you were kind of following through with that and just sensing into that exercise, and what were you noticing as you were thinking back on your story and everything that you've experienced at work? And for you, what sort of things were popping up for you?
Yeah, for me was were popping up the emotions from then as a fake feeling somewhere. They were not in my body anymore, but I could remember how it felt.
Yeah.
And yeah, I notice now that the quality of the energy in between, the energy of the third channel, that has such an incredible quality now in for me in and the system. So that's what caught my attention the most. The yeah, the deep transformation that has taken place in the channel 3 energy. And as a result of that, I'm flourishing, the team is flourishing, the people are flourishing, and we are in a more natural situation now with each other.
Yeah, the natural state for us as human beings and our earth to be in is wholeness and connection. And I love what you're saying there, because as we slow down and listen, so the natural question that a lot of people might have is, well, how does this relate to systemic coaching? Well, we are literally working in the individual systems that we have when we're working in the way we just did. And we're automatically connecting to the larger system that is holographic and whole already. And so what we're doing is we're bringing ourselves into alignment with that so that we can start to become very aware of a very powerful truth. And that is that we are already always creating everywhere we go. We are creating either resonance or dissonance. And as we become aware and we connect to that reality, we can start to connect to intentional creation in the spaces in between us and the world around us. And that's exactly what you're sharing, Karolina.
Yeah, and you know, I remember now another situation where I experienced so much irritation about something that was going on. And at first I didn't want to work with the irritation because it was not mine.
Well, it was irritating. Who wants to work with the irritation when it's irritating?
Yeah, it was totally, I was totally right being irritated. That was the first response, of course, but okay, I started working with the irritation inside because there is a message under all of that. And the amazing thing is, and that's what I experience every time that I do this work, is that the moment that I am willing to start to take responsibility for what I'm feeling, and that I become present with what I am feeling and noticing, and I stop with looking outside, but I start to look inside and do my own work inside, then as an outcome of that, I know the next step. just like that. There's nothing to fix anymore. It's nothing to look for as a natural outcome of that, and with no effort almost. Well, the effort is inside of me and not so much outside then anymore.
The next step that Karolina is talking about is the ripple effect of doing this work in this way, that wholeness we discussed a few minutes ago, is the next step becomes a systemic input. We're literally becoming a system input that's aligned with that larger conversation that has no words. And what ends up happening is the longings of the organization and of the team that's underneath all of this, the longings for wholeness, become something that we create a space for, so that that wholeness can happen in dynamic, systemic ways. And it's way beyond just us as an individual. The other part of this that's very powerful for me is that whereas before I would have felt very powerless as an individual, how can I do anything? This connects me immediately to the work that I'm here to do inside of me. And it automatically connects to the larger conversation and the larger context that I'm here to serve as a coach, as a manager, and as a leader. And so there's a natural flow that comes out of that that brings me a lot of joy and gratitude, because I'm here and doing the work that I'm born to do. And I think that's been your experience as well, Karolina.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to take some time now and open up this to some questions. I know there's probably, I'm seeing tons of comments and questions, and we've got lots of time left for that. And we wanted to purposefully and intentionally create that space. So Magda, what are some of the questions that we can start to field that you see are really kind of bubbling to the surface right now?
So I'll also put these in the chat for you, just in case. But I thought this was interesting. When an organization is under stress, financial stress specifically, usually the coaching or learning gets axed first, as the organization looks to cut costs. How do we navigate that? Everything you guys are talking about seems like, well, it seems great on the surface, as well as Karolina has pointed out, financially.
Right.
How do you convince the organization to see these long-term effects?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Karolina, do you have an answer for that first? I've got my answer, but what's yours?
Yeah, it depends. Of course, the answer depends on your position also in the organization. I am a manager in this organization, and I am just doing my job. So I didn't ask for any permission. I have results to deliver, and this is how I deliver results. So I just started.
Yeah, that's a great point for a couple of reasons. First one that strikes me about what you're saying is that when we serve people, whether we're a coach, a consultant, we're there to help that person to achieve their goals. And so the customer-centric approach that I take in my work in iConnect Expansion and with all the work that I do is to really shape my projects around the key performance indicators that that individual is trying to achieve, and then to build a business case that's based on potential and based on the wholeness that wants to happen in the organization. Now that in and of itself is an art form. And so part of what we teach in our coaching programs is coaches and managers how to do this. Well, how do I create a business case that's based on potential that really will catch the attention of the executive suite? How do I create that in the language of the organization so that they actually hear it? And that's something that's deeper than we can answer right now. But I will say that it's about beginning to communicate and listen on two frequencies of information. The first one is what the organization wants, and the second one is what the organization needs. Now those two are connected, and if you're a great coach, you're very good at identifying the needs, but oftentimes we miss the frequency of the wants. And an executive will hear you talk and say, wow, yeah, we need safety. That sounds great. That all sounds great. And then they won't do anything. The reason why they won't do anything is because they're so captured by the wants even though those needs make sense for them and they can intellectually assent to them, they won't take a step of action until you shape what you're saying in the frequency of what they want, and then teach them what they need. And so that's a big part of what we teach and train people to do. But it's very important to do exactly what the question is asking of us, which is shaping this in the practicality of the organization's goals financially and overall. And for me, what I see with all of this is that there's this huge integration going on between working with energy and the practical results. And they want to actually come together and be integrated so that we work in a new way and create results that serve one and the whole in very powerful ways. And we now more than ever on our planet, that's what we need.
Yeah, and what I would like to add to all of that is that it's really important to be at peace with what you are bringing, the systemic approach or whatever it is that you are bringing into an organization. Because when you are not at peace with it, or you're doubting or whatever, that's what you will bring into the energy between you and the other person or the team or whatever. So it's really important to start with channel 1.
Yeah. Well, and your capacity, people, when you go into an organization as a coach or you're in engagements as a coach, people don't listen so much to what you say. They listen to how you show up and the experience that you create with them. And so working in channel 1 becomes the most important focal point. So what are the areas where you feel insecure or where you feel like your complaints? What are the criticisms that you have of the organizations, of the different things that are going on? Working with those complaints will help you to access the energy to be able to show up with a confidence and a capacity to help those organizations shift in very powerful ways. So I trust that answers that question. What else we got for questions?
Yeah, quite a few are asking about channel 4.
Yeah.
If you could maybe clarify a bit more on that, where it comes in, etc. Yeah, there's lots of people asking about that.
So I would love to hear your version of that, Karolina, because you have your own experience with that. So why don't you share that, and then I'll cap it off.
Yeah, for me, channel 4 is everywhere through all the channels. It starts with me, channel 1, to do my work and to build resonance and alignment inside of me. Then from that perspective and that energetic awareness also, I can start to work and listen to channel 2, the team, the organization, whatever. And work with channel 3, the space in between, the energy in between. And channel 4 is sort of all around everything, because it's the natural energy field that we live in. It's the air that we breathe. It's the ocean that is everywhere. It's what sustains us. It's what feeds us. It's the vitality all around us. So for me, it works. Channel 4 is an outcome of everything that I do with the other channels, and you start to notice it, the channel 4 energy, the natural energy, when everyone and everything is in alignment and just growing and doing his or her job and living, and there's an ease. And for me, that's channel 4.
Yeah, that's so great what you're sharing, Karolina. Thank you for that. I agree with everything Karolina just said. One of the metaphors that I think of oftentimes that helps me with channel 4 is the metaphor of the fish that lives in water, that doesn't know that it lives in water. It's swimming around in this medium called water. And when does it know that it's living in water? Well, it knows that it's living in water when it's flopping on the shores of the lake or of the ocean and experiencing the dissonance that's there with air. If the fish gets back to the water, it's never the same. It's noticing the water everywhere it goes. And so working with channel 4 is a lot like what Karolina described, is when you slow down to the speed of presence, and you breathe into this moment right now, even if you're sitting in your chair right now, wherever you are in the world, take a moment and breathe into this moment right now and listen to what is underneath the words that I'm saying and the feelings that you have and the space that's in between us. What do you notice in the space in between us? As you slow down and notice that, there's a wholeness there that is the foundation of our reality. It's the same wholeness that's there in our solar system, in our forests, in our universe, in our galaxy. It's everywhere all the time. And as you connect to that and you begin to really notice it and slow down and listen to it, you're connecting to a channel of information that is way, way bigger than any of us. And you can start to actually do things that are beyond you in terms of having an effect on the environment. You know, one of the issues that's really important for me right now is I'm noticing our environment and global warming, and how can I possibly have an effect on any of that? Well, I can have an effect on that by doing this kind of work. And so that's, you know, one of the reasons I work in organizations. So Channel 4 is about noticing that conversation that has no words underneath your life by slowing down to the speed of presence. And there's many practices that you can do to help you with that. But, and each of us probably has our own version of that, which is perfect. So that's what Channel 4 is for me. And as we look
Thanks,
at this,
Trace.
yeah, go ahead, Magda.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
No, go ahead.
there's a bit of a theme around the questions around tools. So some people are asking, you know, are there books that they could read more on this topic?
Yeah.
What tools have you two specifically used in your systemic work? How to create group safety, as in literally, you know, how do you do it inside the team setting? If you could talk about, yeah, some of those kind of practical things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you for that, Magda. And I'll go first, and then Karolina, you can come after me. So the tools and the techniques of systemic coaching, management, and leadership, the program, this is a precursor for the program that Coach Arya was going to sponsor in January. And so many of those tools will be there. One of the tools that we have used is called the FASTER framework, and it's connecting people to the different energy that's going on inside of them. And creating safety, first and foremost, is about creating safety within me, like we've discussed. And so doing my work inside of me, and there's specific techniques and ways to do that so that I can then do my work outside of me and create a safety container with people. When they feel safe, then we can work with energy very, very quickly. And so that's a technique that we use in our workshops and in our programs, and we'll also be offering that in January when Coach Arya sponsors the program. One other thing that I would say as well is that for both Karolina and I, in the work that we've been doing, both of us in our own way for a long time, we've continued to evolve and iterate it. And one thing that's been very helpful for us is using some of the tools and frameworks of Transformational Presence and Alan Seal's work from the Center of Transformational Presence. And Alan Seal and I are very good friends and colleagues, and Karolina is also a friend of Alan's. And I've worked with Alan all over the world for the last 3 years as well, in different workshops and programs as well. So I've had the privilege of that. For me, what I've really integrated from his work into mine is the foundational 3 questions that he has, which is what wants to happen, who is it asking me to be, and what is that asking me to do? And those 3 questions are integrated into many of his tools. And you'll notice those 3 questions at the end of our exercise that we used here today, that we really, asked the potential-based questions to discover, or for you to discover, what it is that you can take as the next step, who it's asking you to be, and what it's asking, or what wants to emerge. So some of the very practical tools are just like that. They're very simple, they're very step-by-step, and then they expand from there to give you more space to work with a team and to work with a department, and there's more tools and frameworks as well that we can work with. So that's what I would say to that. Karolina, do you have a response to that too?
Yeah, there's not much that I can add. we have, as you said, used a combination of the systemic approach and some tools from Transformational Presence.
Mm-hmm.
And the combination is really powerful.
Yeah.
Because we don't focus on problems, but we focus on the potential. And by focusing on the potential, already something shifts in the energy. And already people feel more connected to what is going on than when you have to solve a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very key what you were sharing.
Yeah, I think there's a tendency for us as people to sometimes look at, okay, what are the tips, tricks, techniques, the 3 steps to do this? And there's nothing wrong with that, except that I would also, well, not except, I would add to that, that what's even more important is the inner work that you're doing inside of yourself before that meeting you're wanting to create safety in, and also during that meeting that you want to create safety in. There's a dialogue going on inside of you. And so being aware of that those faster energies inside of you. I mean, listen, we all have complaints and criticisms, and we all have different times when we're afraid and we're tense and we're anxious about different things. And denying that doesn't serve us. What serves us is when we can actually listen to all of that in real time, moment to moment, and then drop down underneath it and work with the potential that's there. And that's the tool that we used with the 4 breaths. When you acknowledge and you accept and you appreciate and then you allow, the energy that's you're working with underneath that faster energy can become what it wants to become. And it doesn't get stuck. And so creating safety becomes about working like that in real time as you're working with an individual, a team, an organization. What I found when you do that is that your capacity for holding a space of transformation and safety, it just expands.
Yeah, and what I'd like to add, because I can see on the chat also questions like how do you slow down to presence and etc. Well, it's not a trick that we've been doing, that I am doing. It's really, I wouldn't say it's hard work, because it's not hard. It's really joyful work. And it takes time, because it's really a practice. And it's not something that I do as a model and then all of a sudden all the results they are there.
Yeah.
I'm really committed to working with myself as a person, and that expands to my role as a manager or as a coach or trainer or whatever, and that's what we are committed to. Yeah. And I think that's really important to mention. So there's not a quick fix here.
Yeah, it's an interesting paradox, because as you're talking about that, and so everybody asks the how questions. How do I do this? How do I do this? Well, what I like to do with that is to break that word down into 3 parts. HOW. The first one is honesty. And so honesty in doing the work inside of you is about really slowing down and looking at what's really going on inside of you and starting there. Instead of looking outside, what's going on inside. Open-mindedness is O, and being open, just being open means being open to whatever's there and accepting it, acknowledging it, appreciating it. And then the W is willing. I'm willing to listen and to take a new step, or to take the simple step to discover what's there. And on the one side, it is like we're slowing down, and your intellect and your ego will automatically go, this is not happening fast enough. This needs to happen faster. There's a sense of commitment to the work inside. When you work like this, though, it's so interesting the way that the results that you were trying to get with hard work before begin to show up with ease and with peace and with connection and with a lot of love, rather than with trying to make things happen. It's, the teams that you were talking about, the 5 teams that tried for 10 years, and then in 2, 3 hour or 1.5 hour sessions, the results that organization had been trying to get for 3 or 4 years anyways in a transformation project, Karolina was able to create over the course of the last year and a half with 900,000 euros in savings. So it's an interesting paradox. On the one hand, it's slowing down and trusting. And on the other hand, it then expands as we work like that. So very interesting.
And someone is asking, so how do you slow down? Well, there are so many ways to slow down. It's taking a walk in the forest, or meditate, or have a coffee and stare in the air. There are so many ways to slow down.
Yeah. You can do it right now. You can do it right now in one very simple way, and that is to take a deep breath into your belly. That's it. You can slow down by doing that. And then when you're done that, do it again. So it's literally that simple to get down, drop down into the moment. It's like Eckhart Tolle and all of his work with the power of now has been talking about for years. The real power is in the now. So how do I access that in my body? Well, I do it by breathing into my body and then listening and then breathing again. You know, at first this can feel really difficult, but it's actually the gateway to something that's very expansive. So Magda, did you have one more question before we wrap?
Yeah, I have a couple more because we've got only 7 minutes left. So there was a couple of people asking about the family system and how this applies in that context.
That's a great
and
question.
then I'll ask another one just so you have it in mind. The other one asked about what do you do in environments where there's corruption?
Toxicity and corruption. I saw that one too.
Yeah, so if you could attack those two in the time we have left, that would be great.
Yeah, I won't attack them. I'll just try and be with them. So the first one, the family systems one is a huge one because for me, I first started working and learning how to work with energy through Virginia Satir's work. And Virginia Satir, I was introduced to her work probably about 12, 13 years ago. And honestly, I embraced her work out of sheer desperation because the systems of my life and work were talking to me for a long time and I was ignoring them. And what happened for me is I went through a pretty huge illness and some surgeries, and then my family also began to show signs of systemic breakdown and some real problems in my family and my daughter's lives. And so I found her work out of desperation to try and help my kids and my family. And what happened was that rather than me trying to fix my family, they actually turned my spotlight from the outside to the inside, and I started to do my inside work. And this is where I first discovered systemic work coming from the inside of one person and the impact that I could have, because my family system was completely transformed from that work. And I'm not just talking about my immediate family, I'm talking about generational. The generational system was shifted from the energetic work that I did inside. And I could tell you many stories about that and the impacts of that, but that's been the case all over the world. And Virginia Satir's work is really a foundation for a lot of the systemic work all over the world that's done, including constellation work. She did a version of constellation work in NLP. And, you know, so her work is you know, where a lot of this comes from. And it does you know, start with the system of the family, and the family is automatically connected and affected by this work as well. What about your experience with the system, the family system, Karolina?
Yeah, I haven't really been working with family systems, so I can't add anything from own experience.
So this is interesting you say that, because I would say from watching your organization that literally the family systems of every human being that we've been working with has been affected. And some of the feed forward you've gotten from your staff has reflected that too, as well as the clients' families. So the family systems are being affected everywhere, I think.
Yeah.
The other question, toxicity and corruption in an organization, is very interesting. And this is, and I have worked in some organizations that struggle with some systems that are very dark and have some dark energy going on. What I can say very briefly about that is that working with the dark energy is just as powerful, if not even more powerful, for my own development, my learning, and the possibility of transformation. Now, ultimately, that is dependent on the human beings that are involved, and they all have their own choice about whether or not they will embrace the system's invitations for wholeness there or not. It is possible, and it does happen. And also, there may be just some learning for me to do, for me to move on from that place if it wants to remain corrupt, because that's not the work that I do. I don't work with corrupt organizations. I work with organizations that are longing for wholeness, and I'll work with them long enough to create a space for that to happen or not, and then I'll move on to an organization that's ready to go. So that would, do you have any experience with working with that type of thing, Karolina?
Yeah, no, not specifically. There was toxic energy in my unit. Yeah, and that's what I said before. We didn't focus on the toxic energy. We focused on the whole energy, the love energy, the energy that's underneath everything, that's for everyone. A feeding energy. Yeah. So yeah, that's the experience I have.
Yeah, toxicity is something we all experience in organizations, and it really takes some inner work on the part of the coach, the manager, or the leader to be able to hold a space in toxic situations. It's not easy. It's very simple, but it's not easy. And so this is where it becomes very important to get the training and support and community around you that can help you with that. So yeah, that's what I would say about that. Maybe one final thought here, Magda, is there anything that you want to address before we start to close up?
Oh man, there's a lot of different people saying a lot of different things. Maybe just sum up what you think is the most important thing that people should take away from this session. And what I will do is I will go through the chat again, and I will send both you and Karolina these questions in case there's something major we missed, but there's a lot.
That's great, Magda. So Karolina, what do you feel is important for people to take away from this?
Yeah, I think people are taking very different things with them. When I see what's going on in the chat, I feel that they really get the essence of all of it, and that's all about wholeness and you being whole in everything that's going on. So
yeah, thank you. So what is important for you to take away from this is the work that you do inside of you has much, much bigger implications for you, your work, and the people you serve than maybe you've been aware of. Well, I noticed one person asked, can we work with the stuck energy inside of us? That is where I have always ended up working, because when I'm stuck, there's something inside of me energetically that wants to expand and grow. Now, it doesn't feel like that at first, but what I've discovered and learned is as I work with those areas, that the implications for me as a human being and for the work that I do are so much bigger than I ever even imagined or dreamed. And so as you go away from this work for today, take with you that the power that you have inside of you is maybe much more expansive than you've ever even realized. You know that on some level, but there's so much more that your work will do as you start that inside out journey. And so if there's anything that we can do to support you, Karolina and I have a private group on LinkedIn that you can connect with us. We have a community there, and we can share with you on LinkedIn as well. And of course, Coach Arya is going to be sponsoring a program in January that will be a training program that will last 12 weeks, where we'll teach and we will do that. So if there's anything we can do to help you between now and then, please just reach out.
Thank you, Trace, and thank you, Karolina. As everyone's saying in the chat, this was an amazing session, really informative and insightful and inspirational. And for me personally, like I'm smiling a little bit because this is the 5th session so far, and it all comes back to yourself. It's funny how that always comes back to yourself. And is that old, the airplane thing? Take your gas mask and put it on yourself first before helping others. No matter what topic we, I won't say tackle. Trace, you got me self-conscious about using words like attack and tackle. Every session that we approach.
Well, language is really important. I actually do that to myself all the time, right? Because I don't even notice the charge that's in my words.
Yeah.
But if I start to look at that, then that's an invitation to do my work. It's like, oh, okay, I got some work to do there. You know?
Maybe I should be talking to someone about my work. But we will wrap up. Thank you so much, Karolina and Trace. Just a few little announcements to reiterate. So we talked about the session that Trace will be leading starting in January. I put in the chat, please email me if you are interested. You can definitely pre-register for that already. It will be 12 weeks for 30 CCEUs, and it's part of our masterclass initiative. So there'll be, I think around 12 different ones we'll be doing throughout the next 18 months or so on different topics. So yeah, please get in touch and we will get you registered. Tomorrow we have a session on diversity. On Wednesday, we've got a panel on coaching mastery. And something tells me it's going to be talking about yourself first in those two. On Thursday, we have polarities. And on Friday, we have Alan Seal, who we mentioned a few times during this session. So if you want to continue along this line of thinking, please come to the Alan Seal session on Friday as well.
Yeah, just a plug there too, Magda. I'll be on that panel with Alan as well. And we can still keep making some connections to the systemic work there too.
That's right. And then on the 21st, we'll have a panel on working with children. So people who are interested in the family aspect, please come to that panel. It should be relevant to you. So I think that's everything for today. I will send an email out to everyone who attended at some point in the very near future this week with the recording and the podcast and links to the LinkedIn group, et cetera, et cetera. But for now, please join me in thanking our panelists. And if you have additional questions, please hop on the forum or email me, and I'll make sure that I get the questions to our panelists, and we will continue the discussion going. And I will see all of you, hopefully, and your friends tomorrow at the same time, same place for a discussion on diversity.
Yeah, thank you so much, Magda.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Caroline.